New York Jets start the season 2-3. They decide to fire Robert Saleh. Honestly, looking back on that, I'm starting to wonder why a little bit. They go on to hire Urich as the interim head coach. Now they go 1-7 during that stretch, I believe.
In that time period, yeah, you're correct. I believe you're correct. They also removed Nathaniel Hackett of play calling in that
so they go ahead
whatever days.
So then they go ahead, and this is last week. They go ahead and they fire Joe Douglas, their general manager. And I just want to give you a little bit of insight from Joe Douglas, Robert Saleh, and Aaron Rodgers, and then have your reaction to it. So from 2019 to 2024, Joe Douglas's record as a GM is 30-64, 0 winning seasons, 0 playoffs, picked top 11 in 4 of the 5 drafts. In his drafts, he took 41 players. 9 of them are not on NFL rosters. 7 of them are not on the Jets anymore. 15 of them are backups. And then ultimately, they took Zach Wilson at number 3 overall, which as a GM, you're going to be absolutely judged on who you take at the quarterback position at the top of the draft. And you can say that that was a generational miss. He was a complete bust. Next, Robert Saleh, 20-36. Something that I think the public and I think an argument that could be made is, but his defense was so good. Look at the defenses that they're putting out during this time. If that was his job to be a defensive coordinator, he would have been a great defensive coordinator, but he wasn't. He was the head coach.
He was already a great defensive coordinator. That's how he got this job.
Correct. And then, but the jump to head coach to oversee everything and make sure that the offense is ticking at a high level, and also making sure that you were hiring the right people to call that offense. We can come to the conclusion that he wasn't very good at that. Now, Aaron Rodgers, he now has a worse winning percentage than Zach Wilson and Sam Darnold during their tenures as the New York Jets head football coach. Aaron Rodgers notoriously went to New York. They signed Alan Lazard, signed Randall Cobb, and then as of late, they traded for Devonta Adams. I guess my question for you is, do you have anything to add in to that little bit of an overview there? The Jets right now sit at 3-8. They're last in the division, or second to last in the division. Sorry, the Patriots did beat them. That's why I got that mixed up. So my question for you is, what's next? Because the report as of right now that the Jets came out and already said we would like to part ways with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, that was going to be pretty much kind of what else I added to this. I'll start with this. Joe Douglas did not a great job as a GM. He found some good players, but honestly, it feels like almost every GM has stumbled into finding some good players. I mean, you just rattled off all of those stats at the very beginning of this. If you want to go through those again real quick, how many guys that he's drafted are starters in the NFL at this point?
So first thing that is of good to highlight is one of his players during his tenure as a draft has been all pro, and that's Sauce Gardner last season.
Okay.
He drafted 41 players. 9 of them are currently not on NFL rosters. 7 of them are not on the Jets anymore. 15 of them are backups. And then I obviously highlighted the Zach Wilson situation.
Right. So an awful lot of failure out of all of those draft picks. It sounds like 60% of the guys that he's drafted are either not on an NFL team, not a starter, or some form of that. So
yeah,
I don't know. Like, if you're hitting at 40%, that feels a little bit low to be considered successful for a GM. I would rather, I think successful GM is probably hitting at 60%, because I think I could be completely wrong. It's a very hard job. Don't make it seem like I don't think this is a hard job. If you're listening to this, it's certainly a hard job, but I feel like 40% success rate is really low um, as a GM when it comes to drafting players. I think the most important one was the Zach Wilson one. Excuse me. That was an absolute failure, absolute miss. Um, Now, I think he did as good of a job as he could have done this past year with trying to supplement and make this team on paper to start the year as good as they could possibly be. They went out and they got an experienced quarterback. They have a number one wide receiver. They brought in some offensive line talent. They drafted a guy in Oluf Shanu from Penn State, who I really liked, who has been playing a little bit. Um, he's brought in some good talent, and he's this season, and he's tried to go all in this year. It's unfortunate the year that he does that, they might be one of the worst versions of the Jets that we've seen.
I think something to really highlight, look at the tail of the tape. He was there before Saleh. He played a part in hiring Saleh as the head coach when he came on to New York. He was there before him. And then when they went to hire him, he was a part of that. You missed on the head coach. You missed on the
Yeah.
you missed on the quarterback who took it 3 overall. And like I said, I mean, a 30-64 record with 0 winning seasons in your tenure, 0 playoff appearances. That the tail of the tape speaks measures. It doesn't matter if he like Sauce Gardner was a good draft pick. He picked him at 3. Like Brees Hall is a good draft pick, took him at the top of the second round, and then Garrett Wilson, you took, I think, maybe 12th or 15th. I forget exactly where. Those are players that kind of fell to you, and good job. You did a good job with those picks, but hitting on 3 players out of 41 and missing on the quarterback and the head coach isn't going to keep you around for too long.
Not at all. I almost think the bigger issue with the Jets is their owner rather than the. I don't think all of the blame deserves to go on Joe Douglas. I don't think he's done a great job by any means, but I think the overarching issue of the Jets is Woody Johnson. I think he
I
deserves some of this
well,
blame too for how bad they've been as well. Because
I
I've been
guess
seeing a bunch of
why
things about him kind of going around Joe Douglas and like making decisions, at least for this season, that have not led to success.
what are those decisions? I haven't seen that.
So he apparently went around Joe Douglas to fire Saleh. He was in the way. He made the ultimate decision to get Devontae Adams and Hassan Reddick. I'm seeing here.
I mean, do you disagree with
There
that?
was to fire Saleh.
Do you I guess my question is like, I think all of these, I think probably the Saleh situation is like teeter totter, but like Saleh has like one of the worst winning percentages as a head coach, like of all time. So like, I don't think it's like that far of a stretch. And then those other 2 things, like going and getting Tay, like in the grand scheme of things, like that should have done more than what it did, but you have incompetent play calling on offense. And then on the other side of things, you want to go and be like, dude, Joe Douglas, you fucking idiot. You traded for Hassan Reddick over the summer and you knew that he wanted a new contract. I give the authorization that I'm going to pay this contract, give him the contract and get him in this building. So I guess I don't like totally disagree with any of these decisions that have been made by Woody Johnson so far. I know he's been getting a lot of a lot of heat, but like I said, like from 2019 to 2024, 0 winning seasons, 0 playoff appearances. Like you missed on Zach Wilson. You go and trade for Aaron Rodgers. You go and do all of these things. I feel like that the leash that has been given to Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh was pretty long. And like, what more needs to happen other than he saw what he needed to see? This season is a disaster by all meaning of the word. And he's like, all right, like you guys are out of the building. Like we can't have you in here anymore. It's bad vibes. We are then going to come out publicly, say that we don't want Aaron Rodgers on our team anymore. And it looks like they're probably going to enter a rebuild. Like ultimately, like during this time, Woody Johnson was he was serving as an ambassador over in the UK during the presidential term for Donald Trump during the 2019-2020 season when Robert Saleh was hired as head coach. So Woody Johnson wasn't even a part of hiring Robert Saleh the first time, like when he originally got hired. That was his son and Joe Douglas who conducted that coaching search. So I feel like Woody Johnson just kind of has seen enough, and he was like, honestly, like I guess what I'm getting at with everything that I'm trying to say right now is Woody Johnson has gotten an extreme amount of heat, but like when you look at all the decisions he makes and like you take everything out of it, like I kind of just don't disagree with anything that he's done so far.
I just think as the owner of the team and if what seems to be as involved as he is, I think the lack of success, if you're the owner, falls back on you too. Like your job,
100%.
that's more so like where I'm
But
coming
do
from
you
that
think
perspective.
but do you think that Woody Johnson gave them I guess my first question is, did you think Woody Johnson gave them a long enough leash? Like I said, he wasn't even
I
involved in
do.
that
I
in that
do.
coaching hire. And then like I thought like this season, when you look at the Hassan Reddick, getting him in the building, getting him paid on a contract, and also getting Tay Adams in the building as well, like it got to the point where like the Tay Adams acquisition was like 2 weeks too late. Like remember when like the trade was like going to happen and it was just like, oh, like Tay Adams like is sitting out of games and he sat 2 games. It was like Woody Johnson was like, what are we waiting for? Like go and get Tay. This should have been done 2 weeks ago. Get rid of the 4th round pick. And then on the other side of the equation as well with Hassan Reddick, it was like everybody was sitting around being like, "Are you guys traded for him and you're really not going to pay him? Like, get him in the building and get some sort of contract figured out." I forget what he signed for exactly, but I think it's just a 1 year deal, but to recoup all of his like lost funds and like pay him for the season. But I just don't disagree with that. And I think Woody Johnson has seen enough. The Joe Douglas experiment didn't work. Obviously, I've read off those
Yeah.
examples. Salah did not do a good job as a head coach in full. He did a great job with the defense for 2 seasons. And I just think that like Woody Johnson was like, I am done with this Rodgers thing. He's an ass. Like, I'm done with all of this. We need to like figure something else out. And our season's over. Let's just call it as that is. Let's start planning for 2025. And I think that's really where he stepped in. I guess I'm with you. I have seen the Woody Johnson hate from like Jets fans from like multiple angles. And I guess like looking into this situation, I'm not seeing what Woody Johnson has done wrong in this 4 year span, let's say from 2019 to 2024, other than just like allowing the GM and the head coach to do their jobs and be almost honestly completely hands off until it got to a point where he needed to step in and fix things because like I mean let's just call it as it is, this season is a disastrous season. So when
The
it got
last 2 seasons have been disastrous seasons. They go out and they bring on a 40-year-old quarterback who one gets hurt in the first game of the season, and then you're forced to play an incompetent backup for the rest of the year. And then you roll into this season and it just feels like you can't get anything right.
no. No, and that's really what I'm getting at. I guess I want more blame on the infrastructure that the GM has built, the allowed infrastructure of like the Aaron Rodgers experiment, like that's failed. And I don't think that Woody Johnson was the person who was the issue in all of this that has gone down. Like I think the weight of the world is on the coach, on the GM, on the quarterback. That they thought that would be the way to get them over the hump. It clearly wasn't, and now it's time to start over. At least that's what it seems like right now.
I mean, I put the most blame on Aaron Rodgers in this situation. He just hasn't been remotely close to the version that the Jets thought that he was getting. The Jets thought that they were getting. He's been very underwhelming. I guess it's tough though when you are firing your coach week 6 of the season to like I don't know, battle, like bounce back. But even those first few games didn't look great. Since Salah has been fired, still hasn't looked great. Like I think a lot of it is on Aaron Rodgers more so than anything, because I think at least this season, I think Joe Douglas did as good of a job that he could have done putting talent around Aaron Rodgers to on-field talent, not necessarily coaching talent, but I think he's done about as good of a job that he could have done um, this singular season.
I guess I can technically agree with you. I mean,
Like, they have two good running backs. I think they have a good group of wide receivers. They went out and they tried to improve the offensive line, and
but
the
just
only like
on
other question
paper,
would be like tight end, but
like on paper right now, Fashanu wasn't an instant starter for them, which ultimately that didn't help them. Like, you know what I mean? Like you should have
he has
drafted
been playing though.
he
But
has
yes, I
been, but
agree.
he should have been. You should have drafted a guy that was week one ready to start. Next pick, top of the third round, they drafted Malachi Corley. His highlight of the season is dropping a ball a yard early, walking into the end zone. Then they took Braden Allen. He's a decent backup running back. Then at the in the fifth round, they take Jordan Travis, who's not going to ever play for them. They took Isaiah Davis, a running back out of South Dakota State, who's never going to play for them. They took Quantez Stingers from the Toronto Argonauts in the fifth, who's never going to play for them. They took Jalen Key from Alabama, a D-back who is not going to play for them. So I guess I think that this draft class personally didn't get enough heat as it should have, but that's just what I think currently. Like, you out of anything, you should have drafted a tackle who was ready to play for you week one.
What was I don't have the draft ahead up right here. Give me 1 second.
Well, what do you need?
I can't remember where the Jets picked.
They picked
Okay,
it,
I got it.
moved up to 11.
I mean,
Or
are
they
any of
stayed
these
at 11.
are any of these other tackles playing week one? Like, have been playing good enough week one to even mention?
Well, let me check. I don't know who got
Like,
taken.
aside from Joe Alt, like the rest of this first round tackle class has been Talise Fuaga.
Fuaga plays.
Yeah, but
Amari
the situation
was hurt.
the Saints is so much different going into this season than the situation at the Jets. The Saints didn't have the same expectations that the Jets had. Therefore, it's different if Talise Fuaga goes in there, plays and sucks, versus if he goes in there, plays and sucks for the Jets. Amarius Mims, Troy
Tyler Guyton
Fontenot.
plays. Tyler Guyton played game one. There's been multiple. You like Zach Frazier, who for the Pittsburgh Steelers, he's a center, but he's been somebody who has
Doesn't
been.
matter here.
I mean, I'm just saying,
I get it.
there are linemen who got taken after him who have been better than Anu Fashanu,
Yeah,
no matter what. So I
I
think
agree, but
so.
the difference is the
If you're gonna
setting
take
that these guys were
somebody,
getting drafted in versus the Jets setting.
I don't know what that means. I'm just saying that picking a Fashanu, somebody in the top that you got drafted 11, who wasn't going to walk in and be a starter for you day one, is a problem. And I don't know how good Fashanu's playing this season. I'm going to go out on a limb and say probably not very well because the Jets suck.
When I say setting, I mean like the expectations of this team. Like, there was extremely high expectations for this Jets team opposed to a lot of the other situation that these guys have gotten drafted into.
I guess I
Maybe
don't know.
besides Dallas. Maybe besides Dallas. But
I think
but at
every
this
team's expectation going into the football season is to make the playoffs and make a deep run. Like, that's every team's expectation. So, I don't think that
but our expectations for these teams is so much different, and I think there's an actual sense. I think people inside buildings at these teams know, like, hey, we're probably not going to win a Super Bowl this year, even if that's what you put on the
but,
board.
media expectation and what is expected in the in the room is completely that's manufactured. Like we sat here and thought the Jets were going to win the Super Bowl. They're one of the worst teams in the NFL. So like,
Yeah, I
it
know that.
doesn't matter.
That's my point at the beginning of the season. Like you're drafting a guy that you can't start right away because we have these Super Bowl expectations. We are going to bring in a guy that's seasoned, a veteran, and we're going to let our guy that we just drafted grow and work through it because we
Well,
can't
then,
necessarily afford to fuck around here
my question
like
then
the
for
Saints
you,
can.
my question then automatically for you is then that pick at tackle at 11 is a missed opportunity, a missed pick. Their
I
pass
agree with
rush
you on that.
sucks.
I agree with you on that.
Their pass rush sucks. Their defense is awful. Like, why not go? Like, Brock Bowers was available at
I
11.
I completely agree with you.
Who else was available at
They
11?
should have drafted a
Bo
guy.
Nix was available at
They
11.
should have
Like,
drafted a guy that could have come in and played day one. I completely agree with you.
look at who got taken after Fashanu. Brock Bowers, he's a dog. Byron Murphy's a dog. Dallas Turner's
Yeah.
okay. Jared Verse is going to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. He went to the
Yeah.
Rams. Like Quinyon Mitchell for the Eagles. The Jets have one of the worst secondaries in the NFL.
Yeah.
Like, there are so many players on this list right here that are, if you were just going to take a tackle as like a developmental pick at 11, like
Yep.
that was a miss. So yes,
Yeah.
I think that Jets draft got zero heat for whatever reason that is, and it should, because they pretty much missed on every single pick. Other than, if you want to sit here and be like, well, Braylon Allen's a good backup running back, like, okay, good for you. You got a backup running back in the 3rd round. I'll clap my hands.
Yeah, I think they should have drafted somebody that was going to come in and be more impactful day one. I think the guys that I think the Olu pick is a better long-term pick, but for the current situation that the Jets were in, I think they should have taken a guy that could have come in and played right away.
Yeah. So I guess my question for you is, well, first, like, where did we get this wrong? Like, where did we get this wrong? I just, my first instinct is like, why did we ever trust a team with the offensive infrastructure of like Nathaniel Hackett, thinking like, we watched how bad it was. We watched how bad it was at the end of Rodgers' tenure, like even with LaFleur. Like, what did we think was different adding Hackett into that situation, like offensively?
Wasn't Rodgers like kind of hurt at the end of his jet or at the end of his Packer, like his last year on the Packers, like he was battling through injuries?
Yeah, I mean, he's been hurt for the last like decade, so yeah, probably.
I mean, maybe like a combination of that, of him bouncing back, plus I don't know, because I don't know if I don't think it's fair to even say that this division that he was going into is worse than the division that he left. Um, I,
Kind
I
of
don't
is.
know.
I mean, this start. Let's just hypothetically say the start of this season, like, we obviously couldn't have foreseen the Tua situation, like being out for as long as he was. But out of anything that broke their way, like, obviously the Bills are going to be good. Out of anything that broke their way is that they started the season playing the Patriots, who started with Jacoby Brissett and then switched to Drake May, and their team is like not that good, but it's like feisty. And then playing a Dolphins team who like literally like is just bad. So
Yeah,
like, you were going to have games be above them, like in games one, just strictly based off that, if you were able to get your job done, which they were not able to do.
I think just maybe not necessarily like from an offensive perspective, but like an overall Jets perspective going into this. I think that we thought the defense was going to be better than it has been. I thought that Rodgers would be able to have somewhat of a bounce back season and play with a chip on his shoulder after being injured his first year in New York. It always kind of felt like whenever people started to count Aaron Rodgers out is when he kind of answered and played his best football. And it's a little bit easier to do that when you're 29, 30, 31, as opposed to 36, 37, 38 coming off of a torn Achilles. Um, I don't know. I think another thing maybe is like we've seen him play really well and didn't think that it was going to fall off like as fast as it did this season. Um, like maybe the whole, I don't know, maybe this like an ounce of like the fact that, oh, Tom Brady left and went and played somewhere else and was great, maybe crept into the minds a little bit. I don't know. Like I don't really, it's easy to say this now, but the last season of the Packers should have just been like the immediate red flag.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, probably. Yeah, I don't know. But so what's next? I said last week, like before that report came out that they were like ready to move on, that like you're gonna be picking at this top of the draft. Like, go ahead, get an edge rusher, do whatever you need to do. Like, and like the ownership needs to sit down with Rodgers and say, hey, uh, you need to be on board for this. We are going to hire like an offensive guru. I said this already, and we like need you to buy into some sort of system. Your system, it does not work. Like the Aaron Rodgers system of you like thinking that like doing all these like timing finesse plays and back shoulder, like it doesn't work. Nobody in the NFL does it. It's not, it's some, it could work at times, but like having it be like the entire identity of what you do on a day down to down basis is not sustainable or will never be successful. So we're gonna hire like, I don't think Ben Johnson ever wants to be a head coach, but we're gonna hire like a somebody with an offensive mind like similar to like Ben Johnson and like try to figure out a way to like make this offense tick. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you still have Brees Hall, you still have Tay Adams, and you still have Garrett Wilson. So I think that that is like a good base. And then on the defensive side of the ball, you have Will McDonald. You'll get Jermaine Johnson back next year. You still have Sauce Gardner. Like, is that enough of a nucleus to for the Jets ownership to be like, you know what, like let's get Mike Vrabel in here, let's get a coach in here or whoever to. I think what's really missing with this squad is just like identity and culture, and that's they need to hire somebody to do that. Or do you think that they strip this down to the studs and like kind of start over? And I don't know what I think, but I think those are probably like the two options.
See, I've been going back and forth with this because I think they need to get Rodgers out of there. I think they just need to start over at the quarterback spot, or I don't know, maybe like find a, I mean, this would be the year for them to take a guy and to take a quarterback hypothetically and then sign somebody to like a 1 year deal for like a bridge situation because I think the talent on this team, like I think there's too many good players on the team right now for them to just say, fuck it, we're going to completely restart this whole thing. So I think I'm of the group of we got to move on from Rodgers. We got to get a we got to get a head coach in here that has culture, that has that people take serious, like you said. And I think you kind of have to fill I think you got to find a 1 year gap situation quarterback.
But doesn't that
And
fit Rodgers? That would be his last year of his deal.
I
Like,
just don't think he has it anymore. I just don't
okay,
think he has what you can get elsewhere.
but like if you're saying a bridge quarterback, like who? Daniel Jones, Jacoby Brissett, like
Jameis Winston.
Jameis Winston. Like if that's the option, like I would argue that like Aaron Rodgers is just a better option than all of those guys. Like regardless.
I would disagree based off of what we've seen from Aaron Rodgers this season.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's looked great. I don't think it's looked good enough. I just think plus the vibe around the team and the locker room and everything with him there, like it just seems like there's just like a negative energy surrounding everybody, and I don't I just can't see this getting turned around
Well,
any way, shape, or form.
I think what makes this extremely hard is they're just not going to be in a position where they're going to
Yeah.
be picking in a range to get a quarterback. Right now, they sit at pick six. They're 3-8. In front of them is New England. They're not going to take a quarterback. Las Vegas is going to take a quarterback. The New York Giants are going to take a quarterback, and the Titans are going to take a quarterback. Like those are three quarterbacks who are going to go off the board before you
Yeah.
even have a crack at it. And I find it very hard to believe that the Jets are just going to lose out the rest of the year. I'm sure that they're going to win one or two more.
Yeah,
So
that was
I just like don't think like being at like the 10 to 13 range of picks, like that just doesn't do anything for you. So that's something that I think should be monitored as well. Like, yeah, I agree with you, but like, does it make? I don't know if they have a second round pick this year, but does it make sense to take a a edge rusher at 8 and then take a backup quarterback at the top of the second round or whatever? I have no idea. It seemed like Rodgers was open to the idea of like mentoring Zach Wilson when he was in New York. I don't think that that was like ever really an issue. But I just think, like I said, I think that if all of this happens, I just think the first conversation that needs to be had is I don't think that we're seeing like Rodgers isn't able to play Superman anymore. But if you insert Rodgers into a system and allow him to create from time to time, because we've watched him do it this season where he can make those special throws, he can do it here and there, like allow that to come organically instead of forced. Like I don't think that Rodgers is like worse than like a Jameis Winston. So like that's where I just think that you're right, the vibes potentially, but it seems like even still through all of this, it seems like all the players kind of like Rodgers still.
Maybe I'm getting like the vibes from just like the outsider Jets fan perspective that the people that aren't in the locker room. It just seems like, and I would be the same way if I were a Jets fan, just years of misery. And the year that you finally seems as if you're going to go all in and nothing goes the way that you planned, I would be miserable as well and want to probably start over too. So I think that's probably more so of where I'm getting my thought of this whole situation from. There'll probably will be interior conversations amongst Rogers and amongst the front office of even they've already said that they wanted to move on though. So
I don't know.
then why are we even bringing
Because we
this
don't
up?
know, because you don't know what's going to happen. Like that's a great report, but like, what's the validity of that? You just we have
Who
no
did it
clue.
come from? Like what?
I don't know, Twitter. Like there's just
Oh,
like it. Like yes, that is a report or whatever, and it's gotten out there, but like we quite literally have no clue what's going to happen at all. So I'm not going to sit here and be like, "Yep, Rogers is out," like, and that's it. Like I have no idea like what they're going to do.
I don't know if I'm the front office and I look at the whole Aaron Rodgers experience and how it's gone. It's been one full season of injury, another full season of just being absolutely below expectations. What are the odds that what are the odds that this third season with a new head coach, with a new offensive coordinator, um, and a year older quarterback is going to be that much better?
I can play devil's advocate at this in this situation as well,
Yeah, please. Yeah, please.
because they lost to San Fran. That was a loss. They beat Tennessee. They beat New England. If Greg the Leg could have made a kick in the
The
game versus
Broncos.
Denver,
Hmm.
they would have won that game. If Greg the Leg could have made a kick against the Minnesota Vikings, they would have won that game. If Greg the Leg didn't miss 3 kicks against the Buffalo Bills, they would have won that game. They went and got rocked by the Pittsburgh Steelers. They went and dropped one to the New England Patriots. You go and you beat Houston. You get throttled by Arizona, and you lose last second to the Indianapolis Colts by 1. Like at the bare minimum, like this team without like the bounces, and like the bounces obviously happen all the time. Like if they just had a few things go their way, this team's sitting at 500. So
Fair point.
I just think that like yes, it is bad, but like it's not that bad where it's like what the hell is going on, because
Yeah.
you said like can we get like average play out of the offense, put an offensive guru with this group of people, and I think you do get average play from this offense. On the other side of the ball, if you watch their defense, and I said this after watching the Arizona game, they are always misaligned. They're never lined up correctly. and they are not athletic enough to just do whatever they want and roam and like be like do all this shit. So
Yeah.
I just think it straight comes down to having bad coaching in the building. Like
So
Sauce
my
Gardner's
question. Go ahead. Go ahead. Finish your
Sauce
statement.
Gardner's reaction to like getting shown tackling videos like by Jeff Urich like was like maybe the worst vibes thing ever. Like Rodgers isn't the bad vibes. It's the coaching staff. Like that's the way I'm interpreting it.
So my follow up to that is: do you trust Woody Johnson to hire a competent GM to then hire a competent OC, DC,
I
head
don't know.
coach? Because
I don't
that,
know.
if that's the issue, truly, if the issue is just the coaching staff, they haven't had a great track record recently of hiring GMs and hiring coaches that have led to
Yeah,
success.
I agree with you, and you can say the same thing about, like, the Houston Texans, and they go and get
For
Nick
sure.
Caserio, and they get
Yeah, it
D'Amico
only takes
Ryans, they
1
turn
year.
the
It
entire
takes
thing.
1 year.
And you go, like, to the same thing with the Detroit Lions, and they hire their GM, they hired Dan Campbell, and, like, they're a Super Bowl favorite. So, like, on paper, like, no, they haven't proved that they're able to do that, but there's also many examples of organizations in the last 5 years who have been laughing stocks who have been able to turn it around. So, I'm not completely out on the idea that it is possible to get somebody good in that building. I mean, bro, at the end
I
of the day, like, this leads into a whole nother conversation that I wanted to talk about as well. Like, these jobs are one of 32. You are going to be the face of the New York Jets and make a ton of money and be able to like be one of 32 like in the world. This is like one of the most desirable jobs of all time. So
Yeah.
the line of people who are going to be lined
Yeah.
up to get an interview with the New York Jets, because if you turn around the New York Jets and if you make them
Yeah.
good, and all of these guys are complete egomaniacs who think that they are able to do that, they are forever a legend in the city of New York. And that is what everybody's
Correct.
chasing.
Yeah,
So
I completely agree with you there. I think that this is a very sought after job. Um, one of 32, like you mentioned. If you're the guy that fixes the New York Jets, who have not been able to put it together since what Mark Sanchez was there in like
yeah.
2012, like
Mhm.
you will be beloved in that city for the rest of your life. So the list might be long, and that could cause an issue, maybe too many options to pick, but I do think there will be people that are beyond qualified that will be interested in this position. And I mean, how can you not? Playing in New York, extremely passionate fan base. um, the New York teams haven't won a Super Bowl since what? When did Eli Manning?
Like
When was
2008.
that? Yeah, it's been for 16 years since a New York football team has won a Super Bowl. So I think they'll get plenty of quality guys that want to take on this challenge. It's just a matter, obviously, of picking the right one and then building a competent coaching staff. And the coaching staff part of it, like the head coaching staff part of it, seems like a little bit easier than the GM part of it, because I think the Vrabel thing makes like a ton of sense. I think he brings culture. He brings like that lunch pal mentality of like, hey, we're gonna do what it takes to win this football game. We're gonna hit you in the mouth. We're gonna win in the trenches, and like we're not gonna make mistakes. And we've seen Vrabel have success with lesser talent on his teams than this current Jets roster. So I love that. I love that thought, but I'll be interested to see what other names pop up as the season ends and as we venture into the off season for this position.
Definitely. But we were completely wrong on the Jets. We felt like that we needed to address that. So Jets, you really let us down this year.
Yeah, I was going back through my notes from like the off season. I mean, I had Aaron Rodgers as like a comeback player of the year. I had him as one of my guys to keep an eye on, like one of the guys that I listed as having high expectations for. I had the Jets as one of the three teams that I was buying stock in. Just brutal.
Bad luck. So Jets, you let us down. Before we go, there's two things I want to talk about real quick. We alluded to it right there at the end. I want to talk about the coaching carousel because I was listening to Bill Simmons this morning and I was like super fired up. And then Peter Schrager like finally said like what I think. Like the idea that like any of job in the NFL is like not what like is not better than the other or whatever. Like honestly, the only desirable job in the NFL right now, probably, or there's probably like two, is like if like fucking Andy Reid retires
Yeah.
and you get to take Patrick Mahomes, or like if you get the Bills job because you have Josh Allen. Everything else, I think, is extremely fair to say is like completely up in the air. Um, so what
What
Bill
what what was his reasoning for that?
they were, I forget who they were talking about. And I forget the exact team that they were talking about, but they were just like, well, like, would you want to go to like New Orleans? Like, blah, blah, blah. It's just like, ultimately, if you are interviewed by one of these 32 teams and it goes really well and you have the opportunity to, I think it's more enticing to step into a situation where you get an opportunity to turn around the entire franchise and get it trending in the right direction than like a middling franchise who like on any given year might be a playoff team, might miss it. Like, you want to be, like I said, these guys are absolute egomaniacs. You don't get into this profession because you like don't think that you can take the Panthers job and turn it around. Like, you think,
Yeah.
you literally are like, I am going to get the Panthers job and I'm going to be the next Detroit Lions. So
Yeah.
like, I just think like that notion is like absolutely ridiculous, that like a job that is available and offered to one of these candidates won't take it because he used Dallas as an example. He said, "Is the Dallas job like really that desirable?" It's just like, brother, that is the biggest market in America, is the
Yeah.
Dallas Cowboys. Like, you have CeeDee Lamb, a bona fide superstar. You have Dak Prescott, who's a great quarterback. You have Micah Parsons. Like, what are you talking about? Is that a desirable job? So like, like the picky choosiness in everyone's head. Like, honestly, these guys are the free agents, the guys who are on the market right now who like want a job, want one of these jobs. It doesn't matter which one, because they want to step in and automatically, like I said, they want to turn it around. They want to be great.
I mean, I completely agree that if you have the opportunity to be a head coach for one of the 32 teams in the NFL, that it's an unprecedented job that you can't pass up. I think a lot of the times what ends up happening is like, as fans and like as people in media, we try to like rank which is the best job. And like, I think that that's fair to a certain extent, because I think as long as we recognize that being a head coach in the NFL is one of the sickest jobs and one of the most sought after jobs that you can have, then if as long as we agree on that, then I think that it's okay to like go in and kind of nitpick a bunch like throughout different job openings. I think it also comes back to, we think that like sometimes it feels like one person might be interviewing for multiple head coaching jobs and might have the option to pick between, oh, do I want the Falcons job? Oh, do I want the Panthers job? Oh, do I want the Saints job? Where that's not necessarily always the reality. Like, you might get one interview for the Panthers and as your head coaching opportunity in an off season, and that's it. Like, what the Panthers see in you might not be the same thing that the Dallas Cowboys see in you as a head coach. So like,
Yeah.
if you are blessed to have the option between choosing two jobs, I think then it's a different story to talk about, oh, okay, well, like, which is better if you have these two, Panthers or Dallas. Then that's a fine conversation to have. But like,
Yeah.
any head coaching job in the NFL is a great opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. One last thing too, and then we can wrap up. Shadour Sanders, for people who don't know, I used to shoot like college football and NFL content, like podcasts, practices, like a bunch of different stuff. I used to travel like around the whole country and do it. I shot the East West Shrine game 2 years ago when Zay Flowers was there, and like it was so cool to get to see like an actual top NFL prospect like train in front of you, because at that particular game, like there's two big games. It's I forget the one. I think it's like the Honolulu Bowl or something like that. The East West Shrine and the Reese's Senior Bowl. Those are kind of like the two big dogs that like
Yeah.
people like debate on. Like Tom Brady played in the East West Shrine game. And Shadour Sanders the other day actually accepted his invite to the East West Shrine game over the Reese's Senior Bowl. And people probably like might not like think too much about this or whatever, but I just thought it was interesting. Getting the opportunity to be the biggest dog at that game is going to be the biggest difference maker ever. He's going to get so much time with all the coaches. He's going to do so many interviews, like so many sit downs with like all of the position coaches and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think it's very interesting that these top NFL prospects are choosing to go to like an East West Shrine game and be the star of the show, compared to going to like a Reese's Senior Bowl where there's like everyone's there. And what Shador's ultimately going to do is he's going to force all of like the A-list scouts and
To
GMs,
go to
everything
the
like that,
East
to
West.
go to the
Yeah.
East West Shrine game. And like, something interesting to think about, like there's some good players that come out of there every single year, but I just thought it was cool that Shadour, like somebody who is so flashy, who has like all of that attention on him, decided to go a different route than like what people usually do.
I mean, I think that that's like the least surprising thing that has happened in Shadur Sanders' career at this point. I mean, he's always been the guy that's picked the alternative route. Like he wouldn't have gone to an HBCU. He went to an
Yeah,
like you wouldn't have
good
you
point.
wouldn't thought that one of the best quarterbacks coming out of high school would go to an HBCU. Went there, led him to a bowl game, brought so much publicity, so much juice to that university, to that program, and then did it again when he transferred to Colorado, a team that was just
Completely fair.
an absolute dumpster fire. And him and Dion and that staff have turned around this season. So I think that fits the Shadur
Completely fair.
Sanders timeline perfectly as expected almost.
Yeah, I mean, great insight there. I wasn't even thinking about that, but you make a good point. My question is, Shador always, not even a question. Shador, after every single Raiders loss this season, tweets,
Yeah,
"Thank
it's
God."
crazy. It's
Seems
crazy.
like he really wants to go to Vegas.
Yeah.
You saw like a video of him and Mark Davis like on the floor of an NBA game together, like hugging, talking it out.
Yep.
The Raiders sit at the 4th overall pick. Something interesting is Jacksonville sits at number 1. I think Jacksonville desperately wants Travis Hunter. You can kind of
Yeah.
already see that in the tea leaves. Um, I think there might be a really good chance that the number 1 and 2 pick might be fucking 2 Colorado players, Travis
Might be
Hunter and
two
Shador.
Buffaloes.
And that's insane to think about. Like,
I feel like that there's been like maybe one or two other times where it's been back to back like teammates at one
I
and
have no
two.
idea.
I'd
I have
have to
no
look it
clue.
up.
Yeah. But that's sweet.
Um so basically what is going to have to happen is the Raiders are just going to have to be like absolutely horrific
And they are. That's the good
the rest
news.
of the season. I think the Giants have already kind of made their decision of like we're just gonna intentionally suck. So the
Yeah.
Raiders are gonna have some competition
I
with the
think
Giants. I think
I think Shador might Eli Manning
pull
it.
it Eli Manning it. Yeah,
I mean, I think he might, because Dion has already come out and said like if the right situation isn't there for them, like they're not going to go there. And you made a good point the other day. Like the Giants situation, like, yeah, they have Malik Neighbors and everything, and they might be trending up, but they're so far away that I'm like, and if Shaduer has already shown really big interest in wanting to go to the Raiders, like I feel like he might just be able to make that happen.
How crazy would it be if we actually like the Eli Phillip Rivers situation was like before we could even really like get going, and how crazy would it be to like actually see that happen again?
I would love to see it happen again. I think the media, I think there's going to be two sides of it. Obviously, everybody's going to be really pissed off that Shaduer Sanders does it, and then there's going to be another side of it where people think that it's like extremely smart. But ultimately, I don't know. I think you should do it.
Dude, if he gets up there and is like, I'm not going to the Giant, like say it ends up being Jacksonville, New York Giants, Las Vegas Raiders, 1, 2, 3. And so Shadur is telling the Giants in like the pre-draft stuff, like, hey, if you draft me, like I'm not going to play for you. He is going to get obliterated by the media.
It's going to be awesome.
It's going to be like nothing that we've seen.
I don't know. Like I said, I have no idea if that's going to happen or not. He might want to play in New York. Obviously, New York is a big market. But at the same time, like if that Raiders situation, like him always tweeting "Thank God" after every loss, like
has to mean something.
The Mark Davis situation, like it means something, and I could see that probably being like a match made, even down to something really minor. Him and Tom Brady have a really good relationship together.
Correct.
Tom Brady is now a minority owner for the Raiders. Like, I think that the tea leaves are aligning that might be the team that he's going to push to go to.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that the Tom Brady thing might have a slight effect on that too. I will say though, Shadur like doesn't seem like a guy that would, at least from what I've seen, he doesn't seem like a guy that would ever be like, no, don't pick me. Like the guy to pass up a challenge, and being in a big market like the New York playing for the Giants, like obviously that's not like a great situation to be in as far as like roster construction goes, but like he never really crossed me as somebody that would say, no, I'm not going to play for you. But maybe that conversation comes from somebody like in his camp aside from Shadur.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Maybe we'll see like Dion. Down the road. Yeah, maybe down the road we see something along. Yeah, Dion. Honestly, we'll see a.
He already said he would say it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then, yeah, that's right. I do recall that. So yeah, I mean, that'd be kind of cool. I think that him tweeting that out every Raiders loss has to mean something. It can't just be
by chance.
Yeah, by chance. So that'd be cool. I think if you're a Raiders fan, like that's who you'd want as your quarterback. I mean, I don't really love like the rest of the guys in this class, but we'll get to that this off season. So
yeah, for sure. Shadur to the Raiders. All right, that's all I got, brother.
I feel like I said that earlier in the season.
I don't remember.
That Shadur to the Raiders, that the Raiders should honestly tank for him.
You should find the clip.
Look through. I'm gonna have to go back look through the film, unless I dreamt it.
Yeah, I don't know. You have to find it. If you find it, let me know.
All right, I'll take a look and see what I can find.
All right, peace.
All right, go Birds.
White clouds blowing out when we max 4-5, not the size, but it kick up.